Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, Shaggy Mantano here, the internet's hairiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. And this is another episode of the Needle Drop Podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast on the YouTube channel. In this episode, a very special interview featuring yours truly. We have had a lot of great guests on this podcast. This is episode 50. And in this episode, worst guest so far, Mr. Zach Hart interviews yours truly. So I'm like the guest. He asks me a lot of questions about what I do and the music industry, I guess, from my standpoint. And it turns out to be a pretty fun interview. I always have fun talking to Zach. You may already remember him from his website, We Listen For You, or the really hilarious emails that he sends me and I post up onto Twitter on a regular basis. But anyway, if you want to support this podcast, you could do a few things. You could do what you're doing now. Watch it on YouTube, comment, like, share this video, hit up our Amazon Associates link down there in the description. Anything you buy on Amazon, if you live in the US, we get kickback from it. It does not add to your overall price. You can also hit up the support link down there where you can subscribe to up-to-date episodes of this podcast for a small, tiny, minuscule monthly fee. And also linked down there in the description, there is our iTunes link for this podcast where we backlog older episodes. So you can subscribe to that as well and hear older episodes of the podcast. Okay? All right, guys. That's it for this intro. Enjoy the episode. Whoa!
Hey everybody, this is Zach Hart from We Listen For You. I have taken over the Needle Drop podcast on the YouTube channel, The Needle Drop, for a very special 50th podcast. Before you click away, we have a very, very special guest, Tom York of Radio. Tom? Tom? I'm just joking. We couldn't get Tom, so we did the next best thing. We're flipping the script here today. We have Anthony Fantano from the Needle Drop on the Needle Drop podcast as a guest. How's it going?
It's going good. What's going on with you?
Not much, man. I'm glad that you came on your own show. All right. Well,
this was your idea, so
this was my
don't make me regret it.
Oh, you're gonna regret it.
Okay, good.
Just wait for the comment section.
Yeah.
So the idea behind this is, I really like your podcast. We get to find out all sorts of interesting things. So I was thinking, why not get to find out about you, Anthony? Because you're a very mysterious man. So I'm going to start with a very easy question, just kind of ease us into it, okay?
Okay.
All right. How much money do you make a year? I'm joking. All right. Let's talk about. Okay. No more jokes. Let's talk about surprise albums and the role of the critic with surprise albums. We've had the Beyonce come out. We've had the Drake album come out. James Blake, and then Radiohead. So it's been a busy week for you. Do you have enough time to review these adequately, in your opinion?
I think I have adequate time to react to them as much as sort of anybody else has who's listening. I think the role of the critic, especially when it comes to these sorts of surprise records, is to just kind of help stir the pot, facilitate discussion, and just kind of get people to, it doesn't really matter whether or not they fully agree with you, or me specifically, as much as what I'm trying to do is get people to think critically about what they're listening to.
Are you eating an apple right now?
A little bit.
Okay.
I'll put it down.
Well, what do you typically like? How long do you typically like to sit with an album before you do the video? Is it just case-by-case instances, or?
Like, preferably, I'd like to sit with an album for at least a week,
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily, at least in my experience, it doesn't necessarily add to or take away from my experience with the album. Usually I know pretty early on whether or not I like the record, and subsequent listens are kind of spent just trying to find out what it is exactly about the record that's kind of, making me really excited or turning me off, getting more acquainted with it so that I can actually kind of describe what it is about the album that appeals to me or that I think is just terrible. And to my point, there are albums that I've spent weeks with prior to the review, and I just ended up either hating them or just thinking they were okay or loving them, and sort of, vice versa. There are records that I've had a very short amount of time with, and I've been able to kind of maintain my opinion, or I guess, those albums did end up sort of on my year-end list. There are very few records that I sort of either end up loving or am just kind of lukewarm on, that end up, in a very big way moving far up or far down my year-end list. But yeah, like a week would be ideal, but, sort of the way that the internet and album releases work now, that's just really not like possible, because a majority of the conversation around a given album is sort of almost completely evaporated by the time a week has passed by the release.
Right. So you feel like you're adding to the conversation by getting there early.
Getting there, not necessarily early to the point where you're talking before everybody else is, but kind of just involving yourself within that peak amount of time that everybody else is kind of conversing about the record. Yeah. Because the way the albums are released now, and just the way that the internet kind of ingests albums, it's kind of flipped the whole script on the promotional game. By the time the album is released, that's when the album sees kind of its lowest level of hype, because the record has dropped, the moment we've all been waiting for has happened, and that's really all there is to it. There's no more build up, there's nowhere you can really go from there. So nowadays it just kind of seems like it's all done in reverse. We have the album drop out of nowhere, and then maybe beforehand we have a few tracks that are just like teased toward us, and then afterwards we get music videos, and afterwards we have these live shows, and afterwards we have all these other various kinds of promotions that are just kind of meant to remind us that the album exists and actually get us to go listen to the album or go buy the album.
In the history of Needle Drop, like, what are some instances of you listen to the record, you feel like you give a fair critique to it, and then months, maybe years later, you go, oh shit, I really love that record and I panned it? Or is there anything popping out in your head of past records that you feel like you got wrong in your review?
Not really. Nothing I've done a complete 180 on. I mean, there are some records that I've maybe I busted a 9 out as soon as I reviewed it, and then maybe it's just an 8 in retrospect. And there are some records that I've kind of given a 7, and I ended up loving them, sort of like in the case of Gorillaz Plastic Beach or something, but and not that I don't think that sort of thing is possible, but I don't think the amount of time has really passed for me to, and for anybody else really, to kind of have a completely different view of an album that has come out. There hasn't been enough time to pass for me to have a totally different context for any of the albums that I've been reviewing over the past 5 or 6 years. We're still very much close to the release date of these albums and the trends that they were sort of born out of. Ask me a decade from now, when I'm 80, will I find Death Grips as entertaining and as relevant as I do right now? Probably not, but maybe I'll be a really fucking angry 80-year-old, who knows, and I'll still think fucking Death Grips is the craziest fucking thing that I've ever heard. Or, at that point, maybe I'll be listening to whatever's the craziest fucking most aggressive thing for that period in time,
Do you read all the comments on your YouTube?
Oh, fuck no. I mean, I used to, but and not that I don't like reading comments. It's just that there's so many comments now, I can't read all the comments,
Right.
And plus, at the end of the day, there's so many YouTube comments now that, they're only there to kind of serve themselves or advance some kind of meme. People are just kind of turning up in the comment section to say something that they think is funny, and they just hope they get a bunch of likes. It's rare that there's intelligent discussion being facilitated or something. So, while I do enjoy, internet jokes and internet humor, I definitely engage in it a lot.
You do have some really smart fans. I guess I was leading you into a separate question, which is like, have you ever learned anything from a comment? Like, you do your
yeah, absolutely. And not necessarily just from a YouTube comment, but I learn things from when my fans interact with me. It's just that usually you have to look for those interactions in other places than YouTube comments. And the people who are looking to put forward a smart interaction, they take the time to try to find my email or reach out to me on Twitter or send me a message through other means than, trying to leave a YouTube comment, Of course, there are moments, and and believe me, there were way more of them in the past when the community around what I was doing was much smaller. So there wasn't kind of this, competition to get everybody's attention. When the channel was much smaller and the community was smaller, the comment section was way better and way more readable and way more thoughtful. And I would love for it to go back to that, but I really have no control over it. Just like I don't really have any control over. If I had control over what my audience thought, I wouldn't really be worried about how they were commenting. I'd control how they thought about my videos or something like that. But, I don't have control over that. So there's no chance of getting them to comment a certain way,
Well, last thing about the comment section because I don't even watch your videos. I just read the comments because I love them. What is going through the person's head when you review Beyonce and they say, "Where's the review for Drake's views?" Like, and that's probably the most commented thing. Is like, and then on the Drake record, it'll be, "Where's the Burn the Witch track review?" Like, what's going through that person's head? Because obviously you're gonna review it. Do they think that that's gonna like make you go, "Oh shit, that person said that. I gotta review that right now"? Like, what's going on with that?
I'm not 100% sure. I think there are some people who are legitimately worried that I will not review an album because maybe they do know that there are so many records that are out there that I do skip a lot of records. I can't review everything, and at the end of every month, I try to put the albums I can't review into the Why You Know review just to at least give some albums a mention that I pretty much passed over. And a lot of people, and a lot of people are kind of mad about the albums that I pass over. But, also I think people are conscious of the fact that my review schedule can be impacted by how many requests I get for a record. So, even if people think I might not review something, or, maybe even if it's like 90% sure that I'm going to review something, they'll still drop a comment in there just to remind me, like, I really want you to review this. This is what I want you to review. And maybe they sort of hope that, even if I am going to review it, sort of leaving a comment down there about it will get me to do it faster.
Yeah, and there was 0% chance you were
It's demand.
Yeah, I was just saying there was 0% chance you weren't going to review the Beyonce, Drake, or Radiohead. That's my point. Let's go. One of the most impressive things about you is how much you get done in a day, and I don't understand it at all. Walk me through a typical Anthony Fantano day.
All right, today I woke up.
Skip the whole protein bullshit shake thing.
But that's a part of it.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and include it.
No, today I woke up.
Eating during this entire interview. Now, what would happen if I should kick you off the show?
Shut up. Anyway, this is my show, bitch.
Not today. This is my show, bitch. I'm making that shirt. This is my show, bitch.
All right, so I have to get royalties off that.
All right.
Because it's my phrase.
Sorry, in Hot Topic right now.
Got it.
Go. After this, you're going to do like 3 videos, so answer the question.
All right, so this morning I woke up. I immediately uploaded my I laid in bed because I was super tired, and I was just sitting there and watching YouTube videos. And the reason I was really tired is because I was up until 2 a.m. last night putting like 80% of the edits onto the Radiohead review. So I was up really late last night. getting the edits for the Radiohead review together. Last night, I think I had shot the review at like 10:30 or 11, and then I went downstairs into the living room and I started chopping all the edits up, or chopping all the videos up.
What's your shooting ratio typically?
What do you mean?
How much footage you shoot versus how much is actually in the video?
I mean,
3 to 1
for the Radiohead review. I think I ended up with like 17 minutes of footage. For the Death Grips review, I think I ended up with like just under 30 minutes of footage. Same with the Beyonce review. So it sort of depends. Sometimes I end up with like...
No, but how much do you shoot? Like, because we see the edits and you're talking.
Yeah,
so like,
that's how much I shoot.
You
sometimes,
shoot 19, it goes down to 7 or something like that?
sometimes I'll end up with like 12 minutes of footage. Sometimes I'll end up with like 30 minutes of footage, for like a longer video.
Right.
So I ended up kind of editing that down. I finished at like 2 a.m. or so, or like maybe just past 1 a.m. So then I went to bed and I slept late because I was super tired. And I had already the night before rendered that little Uzi Vert review I dropped for, as soon as I got up this morning and got to the computer. So as soon as that uploaded, I started putting the finishing touches on the Radiohead. And as soon as that was done, I had some breakfast, which was like peanuts and raisins. And I started working on my Vector review. I had already been listening to the album for a while now, for the past few weeks, because I sort of had a promo of the album. So, and the album's like 77 minutes long or so. No, it's just like over 70 minutes long. So it's like a really dense record, plus like a progressive thrash record. So there's just a lot to it. And also there's like this weird sci-fi narrative to the whole album. So I've been listening to the album on and off for a while now because there is just so much to it. So I had just like finished writing that just before we hopped on a call, this call, I had stopped. I had stopped at some point for lunch, had some veggie lasagna, some carrots and bananas. I took my dogs out a few times today, and answered emails, hit my inbox, and avoiding just like all the PR stuff and trying to get to, just anything that had to do directly with me. I was checking Twitter and just looking at, what people were asking me to review and checking the reception for the review. And I saw that that whole yacht sex tape thing was a hoax, and that was pretty hilarious.
Right.
Actually, so I finished writing the Vector review, and then I started getting into writing the James Blake review, and I was listening to that a little bit just before we hopped on.
Then you fell asleep.
So we're doing this podcast episode, and then after this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to record the Vector review and then send that to my buddy Jeremy, so then he can just kind of get a rough edit on that, and then I can render that either late tonight or early tomorrow morning, so I can have another review out tomorrow.
Jesus. So how much of the day is for you, like as a human being, and how much of it is you working for the deal?
I mean, almost none of the day used to be for me, when I was trying to get the needle drop off the ground, nowadays, I have the opportunity to enjoy, most of my weekends. And, when my wife, gets home at, 5 or 6 o'clock from work, I do a much better job of just, making sure that, I'm relaxing and just like not burning myself out, although, sometimes after my work over here is done, I head downstairs and, I cook dinner or something, because I do like to cook. So I'm not just like sitting on the couch or whatever, or like, yesterday I went to the gym. Though I will say this week is particularly busy just because of all the album releases that came out this past weekend, between the Radiohead and the Vector just dropped, and freaking the new Death Grips just dropped officially. I didn't want to review the leak. I wanted to hear the full quality version. Right. So a lot of albums just dropped this past weekend. So this week is particularly busy. So, not every day is quite like this, like, I try to do my best not to work on like 2 or 3 album reviews in a day, because it's just so much, but a lot dropped this week. So, I'm just trying to keep up with the pace of the industry, as it were.
Right. And with music blogging, like, for those of you who don't know, I've run a music blog for like 7-8 years unsuccessfully. But it starts off as a hobby, and then you go like, oh, people are reading, and you start doing a little bit more. It's always been a hobby for me. But when was the moment? Was there a moment, or was it gradual when you were like, the needle drop has to be my thing and not just like a hobby?
Oh, I always wanted it to be more than a hobby. I mean,
just from the outset.
Yeah. Because it started off as that NPR affiliated podcast, you know, and I wanted to kind of make my way in radio, and that just wasn't going to happen.
Because of your bad voice.
Because of my bad voice.
Right.
Because of the sex tape.
Yeah.
Because of the drug problem that I have.
Right.
I just would never fit into an organization like NPR.
No.
So, considering that the largest NPR affiliate in Connecticut on Saturday nights at 10 o'clock playing indie music and punk music and metal and hip hop and electronic music, not exactly going to earn you any money really. I was earning no money. So, but I was announcing on the weekends over there, and I was working at the pizza place cooking pizzas. So I was doing that to sort of make ends meet at the time. The news director over there, John Dankosky, after a while, he had urged me to, the podcast is cool, but you should start a website too. And, that got me into the whole music blog world, which beforehand I wasn't really well-versed in. Previously, I found out about music from either close friends or just working at the college radio station that I had been the GM of for 2 years before heading over to WNPR. And, pretty much any and all modern music that I would want to hear or have access to was just pretty much all there, So, I wasn't really reading much of the music press. I was like reading the college music journal and just kind of seeing what was popular on the college radio charts and listening to all the CDs that would come into the radio station. And there were people who had different shows on the station, sort of specialized in different genres. There were a few guys who had metal shows, and there was people who had hip hop shows, and there were people who had indie shows, and so on and so forth. So, there were a lot of people I could kind of pick their brains, and I ended up learning a lot about some of my favorite artists there, through just kind of talking to other people who are just passionate music fans and sort of, starting or getting in on some kind of musical conversation. So, starting my own little blog, I didn't know how far it could go. It actually didn't really go that far at all. It was like a total struggle. I didn't really have the funding for a cool logo or layout or really anything. So I just decided, because, I actually simultaneously was passionate about YouTube, though I hadn't really taken making YouTube content very seriously. I was just someone who watched YouTube casually and, just for entertainment. Had decided, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll start talking about music on camera, because from my observations of everybody sort of, running these various music websites, nobody's really talking about music on camera, and maybe that'll kind of separate me from the people who I'm trying to compete with, I guess. So, I was experimenting and I was trying something different there out of what I saw as a necessity, because what I was doing currently just wasn't working.
Right. And did that come naturally to you, talking in front of the camera, doing the videos, editing them, or take a while to get in your groove?
Talking into a camera was something that after a bad experience in a television news class, I swear I would never do again.
And now you do it for a living.
Now I do it every day for the rest of my life.
I once tried to do a podcast when I was doing my podcast that We Listen For You. I tried to talk to myself or just like talk straight into a recorder for like an hour. And it was extremely difficult not to have the banter to kind of keep you in line. How do you, I mean, I know you have your notes, but how do you go through prepping your video and making sure it's just not one long tangent?
Well, I'm really flattered that you feel like my videos are not just one long tangent.
What the cuts are for?
I guess in a really nerdy way, maybe the reason that my videos don't come off like a tangent is because I kind of write them like a book report. I write them with like a small audience in mind.
Right.
And, you know, like if I were going to be giving, if I were going to be making the case for an album in front of like a classroom of people or something.
Right, you're in fifth grade. Give me your book report on Death Grips, you know, coming up.
That's exactly it.
Is that 3 Young Homes? All right, let's talk about 10 out of 10s. You've given 3 away?
Just giving them away. Just giving them out.
Give them away, just willy-nilly. Are those random, or do you like those
They're
albums?
totally random. So
Okay.
if you come out with an album, the next 10 could be you.
Nice. What is it? Because we got rid of scores on our site back in like 2010 because I didn't even know what the difference between an 8 and a 7 was to me. It was just more of a feel like, yeah, that feels like a 7. But I feel like everyone's scoring reviews are kind of different to themselves, even to your readers or viewers. What makes it a 10? Like, because it's easy to go 9 and kind of play, you know, both sides. Go, this is a really, really great album. It means a lot to me, but I'm not saying it's perfect.
Yeah. Up to me, a 10 isn't necessarily like perfection as much as I feel like when I'm listening to it, I've kind of reached this peak threshold of enjoyment or entertainment. Like, I don't feel like I could enjoy this album. I don't feel like I could enjoy an album any more than sort of this level, you know, is sort of what I'm stating there,
Right.
you know? Yeah, it's not so much a statement of perfection as much as it is just like enjoyment. And that's what, you know, all my scores really are. You know, it's just kind of the level at which I'm enjoying it. Anything like a 5 is neutral. It's indifference. Anything past a 5 is sort of, you know, a certain level of enjoyment. Anything under a 5 is like various shades of hatred.
Right.
So, you know, if something's a 4, I dislike it, but only a little. If something's a 6, I like it, but only a little. And again, you know, a 10 to me is kind of like that peak threshold of enjoyment. You know, like I'm thoroughly enjoying the album from beginning to end. There's not like a moment that I didn't really love what was going on, you know?
Right. Is it just a straight feel for like the difference between light 6, strong 6? Like, is that just you kind of going, or do you actually have in your mind like the differences?
You know, there aren't like concrete, you know, sort of listed out differences that sort of, you know, culminate into these scores or anything like that. It's just kind of a matter of like, you know, did the whole middle part of the album suck? You know, and if that accounts for like 4 songs in the middle of the record that just weren't that good, then that I found really boring, you know, that's going to affect the overall score. You know, that's going to affect the overall, you know, again, score of the record. But you know, then once I've kind of decided that, you know, these several tracks here at one point in the record, they're not good. It creates a lull. Then it's kind of my duty to sort of go into those tracks and be like, okay, so what is it about these songs is kind of lackluster or doesn't make or they don't work in my opinion. You know, so. You know, anything really could be making those songs lackluster. You know, it's just that there are lacking songs in the track listing, and that's ultimately what matters and sort of affects the overall score, you know?
Right. I'm just going to be shifting all over the place because we only have another 30 minutes at most, and there's a lot to know about you. You are an internet celebrity, whether you want to admit it or not. What's the weirdest rumor you ever heard about yourself? Or gossip? There has to be some strange shit out there about you. That you eat during interviews, or?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
There is that weird picture that everybody sort of swears is like a picture of me getting my dick sucked. So there is that.
And do you want to confirm if that's real or false?
Yeah, it's not a picture of me getting my dick sucked.
Oh. All right. I had money.
It's just like some.
That was real.
It's just like some white or some Asian guy with like a few tattoos on his arms, wearing like black framed glasses, and whoever took the original picture like purposefully found a frame in the porno where like his head is tilted back and all you see is that he has a shaved head and glasses on and he's getting his dick sucked.
And you have a shaved head and glasses.
Yes.
Yeah, so it all makes sense. Do you have stalkers, or other than me, do you have stalkers or like really weird like hatred towards you? Like, I mean, has it ever gotten too much like where you have to report it?
No, not really. Not so much that I felt like
So
I
you're
was
not
super scared for my life. And I have had people who have been like, you know, like just all over me on the internet, or like have tried to dig up personal information about me. But usually when people do that, I don't know, they just get really bored really fast, because ultimately at the end of the day, like I'm not really doing anything that controversial. I'm not really doing anything, you know, that crazy or anything that should piss off anybody that much. So most people who hate me and try to like, I don't know, like stalk after me in any kind of capacity, they usually end up getting bored, because I don't know, I'm probably not the most worthy of targets. I'm probably a pretty boring target. There's nothing, you know, there's nothing really crazy going on in my life, you know. I don't have like a sex tape or like a coke habit that anybody could like, you know, expose me for.
Well, we could expose you for Cal. Let's talk about Cal. How the hell did you come up with Cal?
Cal is just kind of like the Stimpy to my Ren. You know, he's the Patrick to my SpongeBob.
But what was can you remember the moment of lightning in your head when you were like, I'm going to create this alter ego and have him on my show?
The moment when he was created was in the was in the 222 subscribers special. And I needed someone to interview me, because at the time I thought it would be a funny joke if I had thought myself so famous that I needed to be interviewed on my own YouTube channel.
Just where we're at now. Perfect. It's perfect.
So you're basically Cal Chesta in this scenario.
Yeah. Not as handsome though.
True. So
were you doing the voice and the bit before? Like, were you annoying friends with your alter ego Cal, or did you literally just make him up for that?
I was doing that voice because I think at the time I was watching a lot of like the first few seasons of Mystery Science Theater 3000, and they would pop into that voice quite often, like as if two fat, I don't know, Wisconsinites or Middle Americans were kind of reacting to something that was going on in the movie. Like, oh, you got to take the helicopter ride when you go down there. It's really beautiful. So occasionally I would pop into that voice, because at the time I liked to do like weird voices and impressions and stuff. And Cal Chesta was a name that me and another coworker of mine, and there were other people sort of in on these jokes too, a name that we had made up at work, because at work at the pizza place, you know, there was just a lot of there were a lot of different languages being spoken. You know, there were Eastern Bloc, you know, South American, European, you know, and of course English too, and, you know, lots of broken English. And, you know, there would be all of these weird phrases kind of going around in every direction. And and a friend of mine and I decided it would be a funny joke if some of these phrases that were constantly being said, if they were names. So, you know, if some of these names One of them, like in Italian, I remember was like "Hana Jana da Maron," like you're taking the mother's name, Mother Mary's name in vain. And my buddy Nico, shout out to Nico. You know, we had this name for that phrase, which was John Marone, and be like, "Oh, John Marone," you know, you're talking about John Marone, buddy. So we came up with like a ridiculous name for every one of these phrases, and Cal Chuchesta was one of these names from these phrases that were constantly being said. And you know, so there were like several different names that would constantly be referenced, you know, in response to like the, you know, in these inside jokes at the restaurant. And Cal Chuchesta was just kind of one of probably my favorite names of all the names that were kind of in this ongoing inside joke.
And how long did you / we know it was Cal's mixtape? How long did that take you?
God, how long did that take me? I think when did I end up releasing it? I know like I came up with that Coco song near Christmas time. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. Cause
So were you surprised by the reaction? I think a lot of people liked it. I liked it.
A lot of people did like it, surprisingly. Like on the website that I had uploaded it on Audio Mac, which I sort of did that with them because I wanted to give the mixtape like a little bit of legitimacy. I thought it would be funny if the mixtape, you know, wasn't just on MediaFire, like it was actually on a website where people could like see it streamed side by side with like other hip hop mixtapes. And I think I had proposed the idea to one of the guys over there because I had recently been emailed by one of them. Maybe they were asking to like host my podcast or something. I can't remember. And I said, I'm going to have this this joke mixtape come out. Can I put it on your website? And they said, oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, anybody can put whatever on our website, which is okay, fine. That's great.
Yeah.
So obviously there were no limitations there, but I think they took like special interest in promoting it. And it ended up getting like more hits than the 2 Chainz mixtape that dropped that month. And like, you know, I think it's like in the top 100 mixtapes on that website.
Is there any chance of a Cal touring the mixtape?
Hell no.
No?
No.
All right.
No.
One of the coolest things
I can't even promise that there's going to be a follow-up. And people are asking me like when the next one's going to drop.
Dude, you know there's going to be another one.
I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be another one.
Would you like to place money on it? And you're the guy making it, so it's a tough wager, but I think you'll do it.
How much money would you place on it?
A lot, like $10. Like a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. That's true.
We're short on time here. One of my favorite things about running a music blog or just being in the music industry is that rare occurrence. It's probably less rare for you, like where, you know, like I'll write an article or a review and then that artist will go, hey, thank you so much for those kind words. And you're like, oh, shit, they actually what's the craziest thing, artist to you, that you've ever experienced where you're just like, this can't be real life?
I think the craziest thing recently was like I've gotten a few like lyrical mentions on some rap songs.
Right.
The underachievers follow my reviews, and they did like a tour vlog, and like they were watching my review of like the new album on their tour, like in the video. You know, get like artists sending me their albums early, you know, even if they don't say anything in response to the review, like, you know, I know that they're watching and that they know what's going on and that they might have appreciated my previous review of what they did. You know, and occasionally, I've put out negative reviews and, the artist has responded with like, fair, you know, like, like he has a few points, you know, or like, you know, and it's nothing to do with sort of the shortcoming of the artist or whether or not the artist is good or talented as much as it is like, you know, I sort of recognize something on the album as being a shortcoming and that person kind of coming forward and being like, well, you know, to be honest, I did struggle a lot with that. You know, I struggled a lot with that song, you know, when I was recording it, or I struggled a lot trying to sing on that particular track, and it wasn't my best performance. I think what's important is to just kind of have patience for the artist, and for me personally, sort of understand that, like, making an album is really difficult, and for a lot of artists, you don't have like forever to record it. A lot of these people are stuffed into recording studios, and they're on limited time to sort of make this piece of art that essentially in a lot of ways is a product that has to be sold somewhere down the line. And sometimes those limitations can come out, can result in a great record, because if you're sort of left with unlimited time and unlimited resources, there's really no pressure to sort of do anything at any kind of pace. Whereas sometimes those limitations can be stifling too, and I think it's just kind of important to recognize that. And if even if I don't care for the album, it's important to kind of give the artist another shot the next time around, because maybe sort of those issues that you had on the last record will be smoothed over. And there have been plenty of reviews where that's been the case, where previously I'd given the artist a negative or a very lukewarm review, but on the next record, I really loved what they were doing. So, for me, a negative review isn't kind of like the be all end all, and it's not like I'm trying to shut down anybody's career or anything, because much of the time I'm going to try to do my best to be there the next time around to scope out what you're doing, if at least even for a little bit, just to kind of see if, have you improved? Is it a different sound or a different record this time around,
Yeah. What's the biggest misconception about your channel, the Needle Drop, or you?
That I hate artists, because honestly, I don't really hate them or anybody, because I don't really know any of these people personally. There's really no reason to hate any of them, or hold anything against them. Like people think I hate Kanye or that I hate Kid Cudi, and it's like, I don't know these people. I don't have anything against them. I've never met them in my life. I have no reason to hate anybody. I think that's a pretty big misconception, that people think I'm like, pretentious, or that I think I'm better than everybody else.
Sure.
Like what I try to do with my format is just make it really straightforward and really simple, so that if other people try to get in on the conversation, I've already kind of given you the blueprint to do that, and other people have done that. Other people have taken me up on that. Other people have started their own review channels with formats that are very similar to mine. And that's not something that I'm unhappy about, because the thing is, I have my own point of view. I have my own taste. I have my own kind of preferences. I love that there are other YouTube channels out there that format-wise are doing something very similar to what I'm doing, but they're putting their own tastes out there, and they're sort of championing the records that are important to them, which aren't necessarily the albums that are important to me, because as much music as I try to cover, and as open-minded as I try to be to whatever it is I'm making a video about, I'm not going to review everything, and I'm not going to like everything, you know? So, I'm trying to, again, get people to think critically about what they're listening to, and also maybe just sort of show them that it's not like a death sentence to put a controversial opinion out there, and to, sort of maybe influence them to sort of say their piece as well, And
if someone agrees or disagrees or just wants to reach you, what's the best way to have that conversation that you're trying to build? Is it through Twitter, through email, through the comment section?
People can contact me on Twitter, most certainly, but I mean, that conversation that I'm trying to start, it's not necessarily this two-way conversation with just me, I'm trying to get people to also kind of, in a way, sort of maybe evangelize for the music that they think is important with them, with their friends, even though I'm kind of a catalyst for some of this conversation, I think that that conversation isn't necessarily going to be a worthwhile one if you just kind of continually try to have that conversation with me and only me, you know? You should try to get out there and try to have that conversation with other people, you know? And that's why I've started the YouTube channel, you know, because this musical conversation, these records that I kind of wanted to spread the word about, you know, I thought this conversation would be limited if I only continued to have this conversation with my friends, you know? Right. I wanted to get out there and have this conversation with other people, you know? And that's what I hope my viewers also do. You know, not that I don't like them to respond to me or sort of give me their thoughts if they get a hold of me, for sure. That's fine. You know, there are tons of people who watch the show who I've met in real life, and, you know, after sort of talking for a little bit, you know, we get right into, well, you know, that review you put out for such and such, you know, which is completely fine. You know, like that sort of comes with the territory of where I am working, you know, that's completely understandable. You know, but simultaneously, you know, if I turn you on to some record that you think is amazing, you know, you should probably go talk to somebody else about it, you know, and try to share that record with other people. Or, you know, if I put out an opinion that you really hate, you know, like talk to your friend about it or something, you know, and just be like, what do you think of this asshole? You know, it's like, what the fuck is he talking about? You know, because, you know, that's most certainly what I used to do, you know, when I was talking to my friends about music. And, you know, I heard about people hating on artist X that I thought was really great, or so on and so forth, you know?
Yeah. And one of my biggest worries is that music discovery on this very, very small scale is just going away. What are you doing to try to, you know, not necessarily break unknown acts, but like, what are you doing to make sure it's fair and not just all mainstream artists that you're reviewing? Because I've kind of noticed, I'm going to put your feet in the fire a little bit. Like your bigger reviews, obviously, are like the Kanye's and Beyonce, Drake, Radiohead, stuff like that. And then you do, it came from Bandcamp, which if you're listening to this podcast, you don't read that section or listen to that section, it's really good. How long have you been doing that?
I started doing that section with my buddy Austin, who helps update the website for several months now. And it's only been until like recently as 2 months ago that we decided to make it a video segment. And music discovery on the internet's a really weird thing. You know, the internet sort of has this quality where it's sort of blended the underground and the mainstream together onto the same platform, which has its upsides and its downsides. One of the upsides is that, you know, you really have access to everything. But one of the downsides is, I think, sort of the mainstream and the underground have each kind of lost a part of themselves. You know, they've each kind of like lost a little bit of their identity. Now that there's not really a separator between these two worlds. So now it's kind of like, you know, that's a downside. But I guess another upside to that is that they kind of freely borrow from one another. So, you know, chances are you're gonna hear more interesting things in the mainstream than you would have like 10 or 20 years ago. You know, back when albums just sort of needed to be a little more focused grouped in order to sort of just make sure that they were commercial enough for you know, retail. You know, these days I see our pop stars as super, super volatile. You know, it's any day now that you could sort of find another record like, I don't know, Miley Cyrus and her Dead Pets or something, which like is a really terrible record, but like, you know, that album couldn't have come out in any other decade other than this one, you know, like that sort of album would have never been released 20 years ago, you know, only in the internet age could that album happen.
Right.
But sort of a downside to that is that it seems like the underground is going for a lot of these similarly poppy sounds, you know, or some of these underground sounds, they don't really stay underground for too long, because if it's a really good idea, it catches on like wildfire. And then everybody's kind of copying it, you know, so you never really kind of have this moment where you get sort of this incubation period where something's like really allowed to kind of grow and mature for a long time and really kind of, you know, gain artistic value and merit. You know, if something in the underground that's actually neato starts happening, it's torn from the underground pretty quickly and sort of thrust up as high as possible. which, and how good that of an idea that is really sort of depends on how well the artists can kind of execute once they're kind of thrust up onto that pedestal. Some people like, I don't know, I'm trying to think. Some artists sort of fold to the pressures of completely just like compromising their sound in every way possible. Maybe they haven't been playing for too long either, so when you go to see them perform live, they're not good. While other artists, sort of really seem to be up to the challenge and kind of, like a Kendrick Lamar or something, and completely, come out with this wigged out progressive jazz rap record concept that nobody fucking saw coming. So it sort of has its upsides and its downsides. I like that artists that are legitimately talented, they don't have to toil away sort of in the underground anymore if what they do actually has a wide appeal to it. But again, simultaneously, it's still kind of the music industry making a buck at the end of the day. One thing that I sort of miss is, I guess I miss how shadowy the music world was sometimes before the internet era. And I don't sort of mean in a seedy, shady way. I just mean in the sense that like back in the day, it wasn't just everybody and anybody who knew who the fuck like Gigi Allen was or like Anal Cunt was or like Napalm Death was and stuff like that. That stuff was like super far out, sort of into the fringes, artists like Whitehouse or something, like Power Electronics, that kind of shit. Or like Man is the Bastard. These kinds of artists were super noisy, super abrasive, super extreme. And it's come to the point now where the internet has essentially like overexposed these kinds of sounds and trends to the point where it's just like, nah, it's not even like a thrill anymore.
Scene, yeah. What's the one artist or album? I mean, you have a huge platform now. So let's say over the last like 3 or 4 years since you've had a pretty big audience, what's the one big one album that you really loved? You really tried to help out because you were passionate about it, but you just didn't feel like the response was as big as you would have loved it to have been.
Let me try to think. I think
because I mean, I'm not gonna say you made Death Grips. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, some people say that.
Some people say that.
Some do say that.
To go back to your last question, I guess the way that I sort of, prioritize, underground sounds and sort of make sure that there is some kind of element of discovery still is when I stumble across something that isn't as well known, and I think it's great. I just kind of stop what I'm doing, and I try to review that right away, like, for example, there are a few Australian artists that I reviewed recently who I had been covering for a while. They actually had pretty decent years this year. But I've covered their previous albums as well before people were even like, really talking about them in kind of a wide scale way. The new King Gizzard record,
right.
Not that, I discovered them or anything like that. That's most definitely not the case. But I covered their last record, which I didn't see as much press for it as I would have liked. And it just so happened that this new album of theirs, I thought it was fantastic, and that just kind of comes as a result of following them for a little while. And also the latest record from the Drones as well. These are artists that not a lot of people in America are talking about right now, not as many as I would like. So, I made sure to sort of put them on my priority list when I knew that they had new albums coming out, because I thought they were interesting artists. Sometimes underground records that I'm anticipating, they don't really turn out that good, and I end up mentioning them in the Why You Know review or something, and sometimes underground records that I'm really anticipating, they end up being great, and I try to review them, and and usually I end up reviewing them. I think the mainstream and the underground has kind of sort of Venn diagrammed into this musical landscape where much of what's coming out in the mainstream has enough alternative sort of, appeal to it that I don't feel like bad reviewing something like a new Beyonce record, or, I'm not like completely sick to my stomach after reviewing something like the new Beyonce record. Or even the new Kanye record, which, as popular and as mainstream as an artist like Kanye is, it's just like, completely wigged out record. It doesn't necessarily make it good. But there was something, like really odd about that album. Yeah, I mean, it's tough, I mean, it's not that I don't want to review underground stuff. I do. It's just that, it has to sort of be worth discussion and worth sort of sharing. That to me is ultimately what's important. There certainly was a point in time when most of the music that was worth talking about and was worth sharing was coming from the underground, because that's where the experimentation was going on. That's where the risks were being taken. That's where the adventures were being had. And that's not something that you could exclusively sort of say the underground has ownership of these days, because you can't say that the new Kanye record wasn't risky. You can't say that the new Beyonce record wasn't a new sound for her. You can't say that the last Kendrick Lamar record wasn't like ambitious, I think, somebody like me, I'm kind of still adjusting from that era of time in the late 90s and the 2000s where everything that came out from a major label and almost everything that came out from, that was being pumped out from a commercial radio station was like horse shit. And stuff that like we've almost completely forgotten about now, and of course there were like rare exceptions. But a lot of those rare exceptions were at one point popular in the underground and were sort of thrust up later into the mainstream by sort of their grassroots audiences. Right. So, these days, there are tons of, completely awful, mediocre, terrible records that come out from the underground or come out from independent labels, because these days I think the internet has sort of made a lot of these labels ultra conscious of sort of like these various music trends that have kind of come out from the indie scene. Like they're like, since the inception of bands like The Drums and Beach Fossils and like Best Coast, like how many twangy sort of reverbed songless beach rock bands have there been? And like we're still like seeing bands with this sound, and it's just so tiresome. Like how many more records like this do we need before like people just get sick of it? I don't know, but like we're still doing it. So
is that the one genre you want to see leave? Is like beach surf rock?
Chill. It's not that I necessarily want to see it leave, but it's like the mainstream has its crappy trends, and now the underground has its crappy trends. Is essentially what is going on here. Like if this crappy trend left, it would be replaced by another crappy trend.
Like YouTube reviews.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, I sort of, at one point I saw, the underground, and everybody was very conscious of this, as being a place where people kind of escape from crappy trends because they were sort of being filtered to you from every traditional media outlet that you came into contact with. So there was really no escape. So a lot of the underground artists who were out there were doing their best to kind of, fight against any and all of that. And nowadays it's, now that, sort of, I don't know, I guess, I can't fully explain why exactly it is this way, and it's something that probably I'll be able to explain better in retrospect. But now, I sort of see the underground embracing as many crappy trends as it, sort of works against. I feel like the boundary has kind of been blurred, between, which side of the aisle is artistic and interesting and which side of the aisle is like totally garbage and crap, which I think, has, I guess, sort of it makes it a little more difficult to just be like, okay, well, I'm only going to listen to underground stuff because I'm guaranteed to listen to something interesting that way. It's a little more difficult because you actually kind of have to second guess yourself and challenge yourself and actually like, give something an honest chance every time that you listen to something, whether it's a popular record or it's an obscure or an unpopular record, because, you never know who's going to come out with an album that really appeals to you. Because, again, everything just sort of feels so volatile and unpredictable right now. Pretty much any artist now can, is just like a year away from either dropping their greatest or their worst album.
Right. Which is kind of exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes the whole act of, following music and covering music in the way that I do and you do, really interesting, because you never know what's going to happen next. There are really no guarantees anymore in the music industry. Which again sort of makes things really interesting,
And just from an outsider's perspective, you seem really comfortable now, because I've been watching you since the start. How long has it been? 5 years? 6 years?
Started the YouTube channel in 2009.
Okay.
But the Needle Drop has existed since like 2007.
Okay.
So next year will be like the 10-year anniversary of the existence of the brand.
Okay. Well, oh boy. Do you feel like you're like, because when you were first starting, it seemed like you would add segments and you would do this and you were always evolving. But the last like 2 or 3 years, it seems like very consistent, I think would be the word. Is like, I know you're going to have your videos up every day. You're on your Facebook, you're on your Twitter. It seems like a well-oiled machine now. Like, are you still worried and trying to like look to the future, or are you pretty comfortable?
I think that period of time that you were talking about, it was a time of experimentation because I was really trying to figure out how the fuck to do any of this. There's not like a handbook for any of it. Right. Not only did I not know how to run a YouTube channel, but when I first started reviewing albums, I didn't know how the fuck to review an album, I didn't know it all. So, not only were you kind of listening to me recommend music to you, but you were simultaneously, if you watch since 2009, you've been over the years just kind of watching me figure out how to do what I do too and drive myself crazy doing it. Although, I was very careful to keep a lot of that crazy off of my YouTube channel. Because, I absolutely hate it when people sort of jump onto their YouTube channel and just be like, oh, my YouTube channel is going terrible, guys. I'm awful, blah, 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 blah. And, the reason I hate that is because, I've had my moments like that, most certainly. And I always try to do my best to move past them and just continue making my content that I know that my audience wants, because ultimately, if you just kind of break down in front of everybody, if it's for no other reason other than that I'm having a hard time doing my YouTube channel or, I don't know if my content's any good, that's just kind of allowing your audience to lose complete faith in you. Not that your audience can't see you be human, like if, I don't know, my whole family died tomorrow, I'd just be like, hey guys, listen, whole family's dead. Not going to be making videos for a while. It's kind of tough. Whole family's dead,
I would hate to read the comments on that video.
Yeah, but I would never make a video coming on my YouTube channel saying, hey guys, you know what? I really hate making videos for you. Like not unless I wanted my YouTube career to be over because that wouldn't result in anything else than that.
Did you ever come close to not continuing on like early on where you're just like, no one's watching this shit. Like I'm going to quit. Or was it always, this is what it's going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. There were moments where I was just like, ugh. And it's not so much like nobody's watching this shit, I want to quit. It's just kind of like, in my head, I was just like, should I keep going with this? I don't know what I'm doing. Nothing like is guaranteed here. This isn't like something, should I be banking my future on this? Essentially was my question.
Right.
Because I was putting a lot of time and effort into it, as much time and effort as you would put into like getting a fucking master's degree or something, which at the time I was thinking, well, should I just go back to school and do that instead? Like, would that make more sense than doing what I'm doing now and trying to sort of get this thing to grow that, it's not like there were 3 huge YouTube review channels out there already.
Right.
For music reviews to kind of illustrate to me that, oh, hey, this is how you do it, and there's like a really big audience for this, so maybe I should get in on it. You know what I mean? Like I was growing the very audience for what I was doing because there was no other bigger channel doing it than me at the time. And when I started doing it, it just so happened that I stumbled across 2 other channels, You're Wrong, I'm Right, and Jumble Junkie, who were sort of doing their own music reviews too, who might have known about each other at the time. I can't quite remember, but I remember when I first started out for a while, it was just kind of the 3 of us and our respective small audiences kind of watching each other's channels because we all kind of had our own various tastes and review styles. But those guys weren't doing it full time. It was a hobby. I wanted to push it further than that, and there was like really no how to on doing that. So I questioned myself a lot over that period of time from like 2009 to 2012, where I had finally sort of made it my full time thing, and for even years after that, after it was like my full-time gig, I was still questioning myself. I was like, oh, could the rug just be ripped out from under me tomorrow? I don't know what's going on, and there's always like an element of kind of wondering what the future is going to hold for this job, because the music industry is so volatile. While it does mean that there is a lot to talk about and there's a lot to observe, maybe one day everybody will simultaneously decide that there's no use for what I'm doing. I don't know. We'll see. But again, over the process of sort of getting the channel to where it is now, there were lots of moments where I questioned myself and I sort of worried about the future of me and the future of what I'm doing, because I'm somebody who likes to plan, likes to have an exit strategy, likes to, have a nest egg, likes to, know that I'm going to be like eating tomorrow and have a roof over my head,
Right. These are things too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, if the job that I'm working is bringing me any kind of anxiety in relation to those things, I'm going to question it. I'm going to question that path. But it's sort of my interest in this and my passion for it, and the fact that I just really, really care about it, that kept me pushing forward.
Right. Well, wrapping things up, man, I'm just super proud of you. I've known you. How long we've known each other? 5 years? Something like that?
Since the day I wrote you a message asking you how I can update my blog. Like, Zach, I just got this blog. I don't know what to do with it, man.
Thank God you went YouTube.
Thank God.
But dude, yeah, super proud of you. I think you do a great service for the music industry. I'm going to give you back your podcast to wrap it up.
Thank you.
Let's say the last minute. It's the 50th podcast. There is no Anthony Fantano without his fans. So I'm going to give you 1 minute. Just talk to your fans. Just a speech. No eating during this, because you've been eating the whole podcast. It's killing me. Killing my ears.
I know. I'm sorry.
Oh, he's going to cook more fucking food. Anthony.
What?
Oh, sound like you were in your kitchen.
No, I'm not in my kitchen.
You're going to eat the whole time. Okay. All right. The floor is yours. The podcast is yours.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. It does honestly mean a lot. And I'm happy that not only that you could, come in here in a big way, sort of verify what I'm doing and make it something that is viable, like, not only as a career, but, just also is just like a form of expression. And in return for that, as long as you'll have me, I'm happy to not only try to do my best to share and recommend to you music that might have slipped through the cracks for you, that I think is really great, that I hope will kind of expand your mind and get you to just kind of have different musical experiences, but also do my best to give a level-headed opinion of the new music releases that are out there, that are really buzzed, that are really, heavily talked about, that you're wondering about, that you want to get another opinion on, because music is so much about the culture that it exists in, and a big part of that culture is the conversation that happens around that music, and that conversation could be on my YouTube channel from me to you. It could be amongst your friends. It could be with anybody, and that's again the point of my YouTube channel, to be a part of that musical conversation, to help facilitate that musical conversation, to help stir the pot, to get you to think critically about what you're listening to, whether that be, hey, that thing, that I've been listening to, maybe it's not as good as I thought it was, or, actually, I'm going to think harder about what it is I'm hearing and actually think of why exactly it appeals to me so much. So I'm not trying to get you to think like I think. I'm just trying to get you to think. And I'm just happy that you're kind of participating in this, I don't know, weird YouTube social experiment that I started like 5 or 6 years ago. So there you go. There's my speech. Is that cool?
I'm not here anymore. I gave it back to you. I gave it back. I thought you were going to do the whole forever thing and the music.
Okay. Well, you could say forever.
Nah, that's your bit.
No, you say it.
No, my bit is, I have it written down. This is my show, bitch.
Well, I'm already eating, so you could say it.
Okay. Forever. See ya. Bye. Did you do the music live, or do we just sit here?
It's done with. It's over.